Cisco WebEx calling node. In this chapter, we'll delve into the essential aspects of configuring the Cisco WebEx calling node. By understanding and implementing the concepts and configurations outlined in this chapter, users will be well equipped to establish and optimize their Cisco WebEx calling node, ensuring smooth and secure communication with the cloud-based calling service. A brief overview of the key topics covered. 1. Cisco WebEx calling preset. We explore the setup process for connecting with Cisco WebEx calling, including configuring the necessary parameters and settings to establish communication with the cloud-based calling service. 2. Network controller. This topic discusses the role of the network controller and its configuration for seamless communication between the Cisco WebEx calling node and the network infrastructure. This component manages connectivity and routing. 3. Ports. Here the configuration of ports within the Cisco WebEx calling node will be examined, including the setup of port numbers and protocols for inbound and outbound communication with Cisco WebEx calling. 4. Certificate source. We cover the configuration of the certificate source, which determines where the node obtains the required SSL/TLS certificate for secure communication with Cisco WebEx calling. 5. Certificate and private key. Here the process of configuring the SSL/TLS certificate and the private key for the Cisco WebEx calling node will be explored, ensuring secure communication between the node and Cisco WebEx calling. 6. Certificate chain. In this topic, we discuss the configuration of the certificate chain, which includes the intermediate and root certificates that are necessary for establishing trust with Cisco WebEx calling. 7. SBC FQDN. Here we cover the setup of the fully qualified domain name for the session border controller, which is used to identify and route calls between the Cisco WebEx calling node and the SBC. 8. Proxy. The configuration of the proxy is explained here, which acts as an intermediary for communication between the Cisco WebEx calling node and its cloud service. 9. Node name. Last but not least, the configuration of the node name is discussed here, which serves as a unique identifier for the Cisco WebEx calling node within the network. 10. Node overview. The provided node configurations will be reviewed in the final assistant dialog. Cisco WebEx calling preset. Take note that apart from the finalization of this guided setup, most of the upcoming assistant dialogues will no longer describe each button processing task. The second assisted node configuration of the scenario is for the Cisco WebEx calling SIP trunk peering. As for the first SIP provider node configuration, click Configure to start. In the PBX system dialog, select the referring preset for Cisco WebEx calling and proceed with Next. Network controller. As for the first node, you can limit a node's operation to a specific network controller, including a designated network interface and/or IP address for both SIP and media transport, as no settings or node relationships are initially set. Create new network controller needs to be selected with one of the given network options. Once selected, the appropriate network interface configurations must be done. If required, specify the IP version and whether reverse DNS lookup should be enabled. For enhanced network controller settings, the Advanced Configuration option can be used. The option Use a fixed IP address can be used if your network configuration is static and is not expected to change. Any node will unconditionally utilize the configured IP address in that case. However, in this example, the commonly preferred Use an interfaces address option is used, with IP version 4 and enabled reverse DNS lookup, which is the default. The settings can be reviewed or changed later in the network controller object of the corresponding node. Ports. In this dialog, some local port values of the node can be assigned for UDP, TCP, and TLS. Ensure that those port values conform to the network and remote configurations. If multiple nodes and network controllers in any node share the same local Ethernet interface and IP address in the operating system, it is mandatory to use unique port ranges to avoid any port collisions. Note that the restricted ranges for dynamic UDP TCP ports must be at least 3 times higher than the amount of maximum concurrent sessions. Such settings can be reviewed or changed later in the network controller dialog of the node. An example can be found in the section Network Controller. Certificate source. In this example, the certificate and private key will be imported by selecting the option Upload the certificate for this node. For using a certification issuance provider, for instance, Let's Encrypt, ZeroSSL, or GoDaddy, the option Order a certificate from a certification issuance service can be selected. Take note that this configuration procedure is not shown and not described here. Take note of the Cisco WebEx calling supported root CAs. And check with what root certificate authorities are supported for calls to Cisco WebEx audio and video platforms. Certificate and private key. To set the private key and public certificate, it's important to include the SBC FQDN in the certificate's subject, common name, or subject alternate name fields. However, if you choose to skip the certificate and private key configurations, you can select the option I do not want to provide a certificate and an associated private key yet. Take note that the certificate exchange and handshake are mandatory for the WebEx calling SIP signaling connectivity via transport layer security, so they must be provided at a later time. Such configurations can be reviewed and changed anytime in the Network Security Profile dialog of the referring node. Click on the Configure button to start a sub-assistant. In this guided setup, the option Import of the certificate and/or private key is used. The required files must be browsed, selected, and imported one at a time. If the import and subject validation is fine and nothing is highlighted in red, which indicates an error, you can proceed with Finish. Back in the main assistant dialog of this node, you can proceed with the configuration if everything is set as desired. Certificate chain. A certificate chain is used to establish secure communication channels by verifying the authenticity and integrity of participating entities. It consists of a sequence of signed certificates, ensuring trust and enabling encrypted communication within the system. If required, additional certificates can be requested, added, or removed. SBC FQDN. Next, determine the AnyNode SBC FQDN. Ensure that this publicly reachable and resolvable FQDN corresponds to the one in the Cisco WebEx calling SIP trunk configuration. An SBC fully qualified domain name is a unique address that identifies the session border controller. It enables proper communication, routing, and certificate validation for secure connections within the system. The AnyNode SBC FQDN in this example is sbc6.lab.anynode.de. The corresponding WebEx SIP trunk configuration can be reviewed in the chapter Cisco WebEx calling configuration. Edge proxy address. Set the provided WebEx calling edge proxy address FQDN or the WebEx calling edge proxy address SRV as a SIP proxy server URI. If needed, check with the AnyNode SIP trunk configuration details in Cisco's WebEx Control Hub. An example is given in the Cisco WebEx calling configuration chapter. Name. The default node name is Cisco WebEx calling and can be changed on demand. Node overview. Back in the main view of the assistant, you now get an overview of the completed configuration. For the routing behavior determination of the selected scenario, continue with the configuration. Routing. The routing for this setup is determined with the option Use Direct Routing with a prefix filter. This method only routes SIP sessions to the Cisco WebEx calling node if the specified E164 prefix matches. You may prefer the Use Dial String routing method if the routing should be restricted to a specific dial string. For security reasons, the option Use Direct Routing without a prefix filter is not recommended. However, the applied configuration details can be reviewed in the routing domain chapter. Note that any node's route selection through the routing domain occurs after applying the incoming dial string rewrite rules of a source node, and before applying the outgoing dial string rewrite rules of the destination node. Such filter rules can be defined for each node in the dial string rewriting and mapping section of its SIP node settings. If everything is set and all the assistant steps of this scenario are marked with the green circular confirmation icon with a check mark, click Finish to complete the guided configurations. Commit. One of the basic functions in any node's frontend that should be internalized. Always confirm the AnyNode configurations and configuration changes using the commit function. Please observe the display in the top right corner. A red No of the committed status always indicates that action is required. Simply use commit and it will change into a green Yes. Congratulations! You've completed the configuration with a Cisco WebEx calling node and an SIP provider node without overlooking any important steps.